If you're a Trinbagonian, your actions and your words should ensure that this country continues to blossom. But if you are based on, well, my motherland is there, my motherland is here, then you're just for yourself and those who look like you. So patriotism allows you to take ownership for everybody, have a level of integrity, and make decisions that allow the country to blossom.
Welcome to Manstory. A lot of the ills in society are due to youth not having positive role models and getting caught up with individuals who influence them on a negative path. Manstory seeks to highlight men in the Caribbean and beyond who are upstanding citizens. No, these men aren't perfect, but they excel in different aspects of society and can encourage the next generation by sharing their own journey with us. Keevan Lewis is a born and bred son of San Fernando. He attended Presentation College San Fernando before furthering his studies at Dewey St. Augustine and has been a health and safety specialist for the past 12 years. Keevan has also built his Instagram platform called Kevo TV, where his brand of clean educational comedy has become a household name. His talents have been taken to the stand-up comedy stage, performing throughout the region, USA and Canada. He's also an entrepreneur, co-owning both Black Sheep Barberg Limited and Pump Event Management. His personal mantra is to encourage others to become the best version of themselves.
Well, Kevo is, I would say, a combination of different things. Kevo is a thinker, he's an entrepreneur, he's a comedian. He is someone who believes in becoming the best version of themselves. I'm an activist in terms of bullying. I really champion the cause. I champion the cause in terms of making sure people understand how bullying can affect people. And I'm a regular guy. I'm a chill dude. I do, you know, I guess I don't do too much for the gram, if you know what I mean. And I love life. I love everything about my culture in Trinidad and Tobago. And that's me in a nutshell.
You say you're a chill guy and you don't do a
Yeah.
lot for the gram, but I mean you're pretty known on the gram. I mean your videos have a lot of views.
Yeah. They do. I guess when I say I don't do it for the gram, it's more for the message. It's not really for the views per se. It's more to get the message across. So the platform that I put there is to instill some level of thought in those who are listening and watching, as opposed to trying to get to 1 million followers. That's really not my goal.
It's just a good byproduct.
Correct.
I can appreciate that. You mentioned bullying. Let me see if I can tie this up with another question I wanted to ask. What drives you, and is bullying part of well, one at a time. So what drives you?
What drives Kevo? Definitely, it would be being able to get people to think. Right? I remember Jordan Peterson said that to think is to risk being offensive. And offensive doesn't mean vulgar in that sense. It just means getting your mind to expand to something that you probably didn't think about. And I was driven by that mainly because I looked at Steve Harvey do an interview many years ago, because he's one of my mentors, people I follow. And he said, when you're a comedian, you have the ability to get people to listen to you. When you listen to a song or a concert, people are always entertaining based on the melody, but they're not listening to every single word. But as a comedian, the crowd has to listen to the start, the middle, and the end to get the punchline. So they are very attentive. And what drives me is that the fact that I have that gift to get people to pay attention is really for me to get them to think about something other than the joke. So the joke will be funny, but there's some level or some aspect of activism, some aspect of motivation that resides within the joke sometimes, or even in the comedy set, that allows them to think other than just the joke, or leave my set or leave my page with not just a laugh, but something to think about.
All right, interesting. So what what is it about bullying that
Mhm.
why bullying? Why choose that as something to focus on?
Well, when I was in secondary school and primary school, I was the victim of bullying, and I realized that bullying makes you feel alone. When you're bullied, you feel alone. You feel you have no one else to talk to or turn to. And my comedy is based around making sure no one feels alone. And when I put forward my content, it's really based on not getting people to laugh at me, even though I may have some funny quirks, etc. It's getting people to laugh with me. So it's more of getting people to relate to things that they thought that they were alone in. So you may have a habit that you do at home, and you think to yourself, it's only me that would kick ice under the fridge, right? For example, if the ice falls, but it's not you alone. So you'd never feel as though you're in a silo. And I think that's what drives me as well, making sure no one feels alone. People can relate to everything I say because they too have that experience.
So you mentioned how you were bullied
Yeah.
in primary school and secondary school.
Hmm.
I'm always fascinated. Like, have you ever met one of your bullies?
Yeah, I would have met some later in life, and I would say 10% of the motivation is to show them that I'm definitely not what you thought I was.
Right.
But I think through my growth and through just lessons learned, it's not to shove it in their face, right? I've met some of them and they, oh Kevo,
No,
they,
but
they, they
that must be hard. I mean, come on.
yeah, yeah, definitely is
I
difficult.
would be
And
very tempted to be like, yo.
but one thing I realized is that it's important to always be humble, and if you get carried away with that, it could destroy your trajectory in terms of growth.
Yeah.
And also, when you get back into that space of the same people who were bullying you, etc., you sometimes get yourself back into that mode, or you resign to the original person that you were in that space. So it's for you to be aware that you are no longer that person. So I remember sometimes I would go back to that lineman spot, or end up in a reunion in school, etc. And I realized I was becoming the 17-year-old or the 15-year-old Keevan who was the person who would take the bullying. And I realized, wait, now I have to check myself. I'm not that person anymore. So there's a different level of confidence and assertion that I had to take on as I enter that space. So I realized that I'm not that person anymore.
As you mentioned that, it sounds like you've definitely you have a very good amount of emotional intelligence.
Yep. Yep.
So it's something that you've mentioned in the past. How important do you think emotional intelligence is to 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 persons and to men in general, especially in society?
Well, I definitely think it's probably our weakest link as men, being able to make proper decisions without the influence of poor emotional intelligence. And throughout my life, I realized that having a good EQ, as they say, allows you to take a step back and look at things from a perspective that you probably didn't think about before. And especially with relationships with regard to a woman as well, you see the emotional IQ of a woman being much more advanced and much more developed. So your ability to relate to them now becomes a challenge because you now can't open up that emotional side. So as a man, both with conflict resolution between man and also with women, you had to be able to grow and refine that emotional IQ and discover yourself, discover a part of you that society says is feminine. So the femininity or the I don't want to use the word feminization of emotions in essence made it difficult for a man to now express himself because he does not want to be seen as feminine. So that dynamic of breaking through that hardcore of cemented emotions is definitely needed for men, and it
Right.
allowed me to see the world differently. So I would say the emotional IQ is probably one of the biggest things that ever changed my life.
Mm. Interesting, interesting. In terms of what you mentioned, you spoke about bullies in primary school and in secondary school. Did any of your bullies go from primary to secondary with you?
Um, one did transition.
Don't need to
Um,
call names, what?
huh? No, we call names, but yeah, he did transition. He was in a higher class than I was. But I think many times bullies don't realize that what they were doing.
Yeah.
They really don't realize it, and they don't realize the effect. So when we got into the new school, for him it was like I don't remember anything I did. So I'm continuing with my personality in
Mhm.
this new space because
Right.
nobody saw the effect. Because obviously you don't want to go and let the teacher know, because at that point in time it's even more bullying if you tell a teacher, right? So you have to take it on the chin and endure that kind of stuff, and go home by yourself and deal with that situation by yourself. Because where I lived, we didn't have much neighbors around. So as a man, you normally have a unit, you have a clique, you have a group who lived on the street. So there was a level of confidence going into school that most guys would have, because they had their team, whether it be in school or at home, always having their back. That's
Mhm.
something I did not have at all. So it
Right.
was Kevo and Kevo alone to go home and deal with this stuff, and go in school and deal with this stuff. So that was a interesting times.
I can imagine. Ah, so I was about to ask you about challenges you may have had, but I figured
Uh,
that's probably what would have been
yeah.
a major one.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. But I do have some other challenges that, I think help shape me, even in the arena of Kevo TV, because it's not a traditional career, right? People would see in Trinidad and Tobago that you either have to be doctor, lawyer, teacher, accountant, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they didn't see it as viable. So my teacher from secondary school, one teacher told me, stop making jokes and get serious about your schoolwork, right? And I'm thankful I didn't listen to him, because I think his statement motivated me to show him what I could be with my talent.
Right.
So trying to overcome that, and obviously getting the jeers and remarks in terms of what you gonna do, making jokes, what you gonna do, making people laugh, right? There's half the money in that.
Look
So
at me now.
exactly, right? Let me know. So I'm thankful that I didn't listen to that teacher. He was a motivation for me for sure.
That reminds me, one of my sisters, she had a teacher who they didn't get on well,
Yeah.
and she when she got her one, she went back to him and showed him. Oh gosh,
Wow.
yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, what was your relationship like with your father?
Well, my dad and I had, I would say during the teenage years, it was rocky as usual, because you're trying to um, impress your manhood in a space where there's only one man in the house, right? You're not a man
One,
yet. You understand? So that
yeah,
that was
one,
our
only one
rocky
bull in the
time.
pen.
Correct. So in his I would say winter years, because he passed away last year.
My
I would
condolences.
say it was a beautiful experience. So I would say 10, 15 years
Uh-huh.
where my dad's influence on my life created a Kevo who thought he knew emotional intelligence,
Uh-huh.
right? From reading a book, etc.
Yeah.
But experiencing it from a man, and a man being able to say he's sorry, a man being able to ask for forgiveness, a man expressing how he feels, seeing a man
Right.
cry and being comfortable with him crying in front of you and consoling a man. There was no greater relationship that I ever had with a man other than my father. I always say he's the greatest man I ever met. And
Wow.
his influence would have allowed me to push forward with my comedy, because he supported it 110%. He was the one to watch all the videos, share all the videos, be there for the live shows. He was that guy who was willing to support 110%. So without my dad, I would not have been Kevo for sure. And without his guidance, him showing me the importance of managing your finance, because he was an accountant,
Yeah.
that man put a lot of good seeds within me that I hope to bear fruit.
Wow, that's some strong and very positive influence right there on.
Yeah,
Trust me. That's some good stuff, man. That's some good stuff. You know, I was speaking to someone recently, and he said when I asked him about his father, he smiled and he says his father was an awesome individual, and there was a twinkle in his eye when he was saying that. And I'm like, if only everyone had that type of relationship, we would
yeah,
have a lot less problems,
yeah.
because 70, what, 85% of persons who are in jail in Jamaica are from fatherless homes,
Wow.
and 90% of gang members in Jamaica are from fatherless homes.
Yeah,
I'm not sure of the statistics here in Trinidad, but pretty sure they're somewhat similar.
yeah.
And
I'm very sure. Yeah.
you know, we have to have that discussion about the importance of male relationships, and how they are what are needed to not have the challenges that we're currently experiencing. So
Mm-hmm. So
you're blessed. You're blessed, brother. You're
so
blessed.
so so true. And well, what's interesting is that in our day, right? I hope you're on the same age, right? But in our
Yeah.
day, we always had someone in any space that we would have been there for a long period of time. There was someone that we were afraid of, right? And it may sound negative, but when I was in school, I had a lot of male teachers, right? So when
Yeah.
a boy stands up and says, "Sir, I'm not going through that with you, there was another man to stand who's taller than you, stronger than you. So that allows you to peg down all the way down back into your seat. And even at home, there's somebody who is taller than you, stronger than you, and can ensure that you are afraid of somebody. But nowadays, it's even more difficult because we don't have much men, at least in Trinidad and Tobago, we don't have much men in the classroom, we don't have much men at home who can give these guys what we call the bucket and water concept. The bucket represents the man and the water represents the woman. And if there is no bucket that ensures that there are boundaries and discipline, the water, which is the female part of the man, and the emotional part will seep into any area that there's a bucket. And some of these buckets throughout society are negative buckets. But water with no bucket will always flow to somewhere to find some type of catchment area.
Wow, that's an interesting analogy.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting analogy. Interesting. So, on that note, I mean, if it is that you could give youth some advice,
Uh-huh.
what would that look like?
Whew. Many things, but I would
You have
definitely
time.
say after I'm good, right? I would definitely say, first of all, every single young person has been given a gift, and your goal is to find what your gift is. They say most people, well, everybody actually, lives two lives, right? The first one starts when you discover yourself, and the second one starts when you discover why you are here. All right. And it's important that you find that gift and share that gift with the world. Being the best version of yourself is the most important thing. There's always room for growth. A lot of people get successful overnight and forget that success is about maintaining your level of performance, or your level of professionalism, and always growing from that. So I think it's important that everybody finds where their niche is. Everyone is a seed, but not all seeds grow in the same soil. We have a serious problem in Trinidad and Tobago and across the world, where there is some type of stigma attached to certain careers. So you
Mm.
want to be a mason, you want to be a plumber, but the stigma attached to that is seems to be menial. It seems to be subservient. It doesn't have that level of respect. When I know
Oh,
some millionaire plumbers,
I was
right?
about to say,
There are some millionaire plumbers,
those
right?
guys making some good cash.
Who don't work 9 to 5. They determine when they work.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's
and
important that
they are begged. People beg them,
they
especially
are
when you have
begged.
a Lord man. When you good,
Exactly.
you
Exactly.
yeah. A
So
tradesman who
I
does his work well.
exactly. I just think that you were given a gift. You need to harness that gift, and you need to ensure that you take that passion and make it into passion fruit juice. I always say that in all my presentations. Passion fruit has a certain shelf life in its natural form. But when you take your skill, you add certain elements in terms of a business framework, etc. You create a skill and you create what we call passion fruit juice, which has a much longer shelf life, right? And you can export it and put that out there. If you just have your raw passion, you can
Yeah.
only take it that far. So take your passion and make it into passion fruit juice, and your ability to make income for yourself should be secondary. You need to be happy first of all. When you are happy, making income will just be a benchmark or a yardstick for you to be able to be successful.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff
Mhm.
right there. Thank you very much, man.
No problem, man. No problem. No problem.
Anything else you want to share before we head off?
Well, in terms of anybody who wants to get into comedy, I would give some advice in terms of comedy. I would say that you cannot be Kevo. Nobody could be Kevo. Nobody could be Rody. Nobody could be Major Hype. You have to be you. People can see through the fakeness very, very easily when it comes to comedy. Always remember as well that online comedians and stand-up comedians are two different things. Do not think for 1 second that you could just transition into the other one easily. It doesn't work like that. There are two different skills. You have to master both of them. And I remember a book by Malcolm Gladwell called The Tipping Point. It's important for you to work what we call your 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours is an average, but Malcolm Gladwell said if you work 10,000 hours, very soon your 1 hour can be worth $10,000. Marshall Montano put in more than 10,000 hours. And now to pay Marshall Montano to perform, it might be $500,000. So look at all the people who have done what they are doing successfully. It's never ever overnight. Very few. And if it's overnight, they don't last. So you have to put in the work. I spent 4 years doing videos with 50 views, 700 views, 1,000 views for the most. And it just took one moment where Kes would have taken one of my videos and reposted it. I went from 4,000 followers to 10,000 in about 3 days. And from
Wow.
there, I never stopped. So consistency is key, and knowing that the law of gestation says there's an incubation period for everything. Everything takes time. And if you know that there will be a fruit, just be patient and you will succeed. You will succeed. That is just the law. But if you're not consistent, if you're not patient, if you're rushing things, you probably might make it, but you won't make it for long. So be consistent and do not be anybody else but yourself.
I don't think we can add anything to that.
Yeah, this is motivational training from since primary school, secondary school. My uncles had me doing motivational talk, so it's kind of second nature.
It's good to hear that. It's always fascinating when, and I sound like a recurring decimal, but
Hmm.
when you see the influence of the positive keyword there being positive, right? Because
Yes.
keyword. When you see the positive influence of males in someone's life, it's something to truly appreciate because
Hmm.
like you're someone who clearly is well read. You've mentioned a couple books,
Yeah.
and so how do you think, or do you think that because you've been well read, that has shaped how you even go about doing your comedy? And yeah, I'll leave that as a first question.
Hmm. Yes, I think definitely it has shaped how I do my comedy, because you now have a different audience. You now have the ability to use some type of references that a mature audience, a well-read audience, can latch on to. So if I say the word mitochondria, if I say the word zygote, they would latch on to it because they know what that means, right?
Yeah.
So it allows me to use my schooling and my study to have, I guess, much more clinical jokes and clinically made content that allows different people or a wider audience to get it. So a bio teacher who may not watch a comedian who's just crass and basic. When I say basic, they just regular jokes.
Yeah.
They could latch on to Kevo's joke about biology.
Right. And so let me. It's like Dave Chappelle, right? He's
Yes.
he's he's capable of grabbing the audience
Mm-hmm.
across generational lines.
Yes.
When I look on a lot of social media individuals, a lot of times they die out because their audience, which is their age, grows up,
Yep.
and because they are not able to incorporate everyday life, they're just on
Mm-hmm.
one particular line, then them kind of dark after a while they fade. So
Yeah.
I've every major comedian I have known, um limited, I don't know that many, but
Mm-hmm.
the ones I follow, like Chappelle and yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
are individuals who are well read. They
Mm-hmm.
observe the world and they look at the world with curious eyes. So, at one point, vines were extremely
Yes.
popular.
Yeah.
They kind of dead now, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, I was going to say something, but I'm going to be politically correct. I can't keep my voice.
But you make a good point, eh? You make a good point in being able to attract different audiences, and everything I do is intentional. So my style of comedy is clean family type comedy. So immediately I have widened my gap from just my age, 28 to 35, to those who will be younger than me. They'll be 14-year-old. They may be. I have some 8-year-old fans who love Kevo's comedy, and you now have people who are 50 and over who appreciate the fact that I could get a video and not worry about anything vulgar coming out of this comedian's mouth, because the average comedian or most comedians may come across with something that may be vulgar. So
Yeah.
now I have the 60-year-olds to the 8-year-olds, and added to that now, as you rightly said, I can make references that are from well-read experiences that are now allows me to even make that groups or those groups a little more dense. So that allows me to talk to different people from different areas. So the feedback I get is not only from the man on the street, it may be from a lawyer, it may be from someone who may be a minister who say, listen, I love to watch you, boy. A priest recently said, listen, when I have a bad day, I go to Kevo TV. So that
Cool.
allows you a little more flex, and it puts you into avenues that you didn't think you would have to perform in. So I might go to
Nice.
a wedding and perform. I go on a boat. I may go to some
Well, not now.
um anything, anything. Kevo could make it happen, So that's the
But
benefit.
no votes right now, for the
No,
record.
no, 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 no. No boats.
Oh God.
Mm.
It's been good, and I definitely wanna continue this conversation at a later date. But I'm curious about one thing though, in terms of the crime situation that we have currently.
Yeah.
What are your views on what is happening? What are your views on it in general?
Um, the crime that we see is often a result of the crime that we don't see. And we may be trying to cut fruits and not deal with the roots. And the roots can come from different sources. Now, there's white collar, there's blue collar crime. And what we experience is that low level crime. What we don't see is the other type of crime. And if we don't deal with the root causes of all these things, because there may be an example of, let's say, domestic violence, which I'm also an advocate for in terms of violence against women, etc., right, to protect women. We look at the man. Why is the man violent towards the woman? What has caused him to be violent towards the woman? How can we, as opposed to lock him up, put him in jail, which I would agree with, but how do we reform? How do we reform the next generation? How do we change the mindset? In the Scandinavian countries, they're closing down jails because they're based on reformation, changing the mindset, and how do you now respect women and become a better citizen, as opposed to just pay for what you have done. I believe you should pay, but how do we, even if we know that the generation now is lost, for example, which I don't really want to believe in, but even if that's the case, how do we say generation that's coming up, how do we implant seeds that are intangible, that allow you to now see a woman as someone who's supposed to be honored, respected, and protected? Do we change your mind in terms of how do you deal with conflict? How do you change the narrative as opposed to having to respond through violence? Why are you angry? What makes you upset? And if we get to the root cause of these things and allow men to have, one, the space, two, the resources to provide for, all right? Because that's our big thing. If you have resources to provide for those in your care, you're not frustrated. You're not going to find yourself in the underbelly of society trying to make ends meet, because a lot of men find themselves there because there is no other way for them sometimes. They just don't know. And even if they try to, they are being marginalized because of how they look or where they live, that kind of stuff. So providing a space for men to become men is of paramount importance for a better society in terms of that aspect. And if we look at crime on the other part, where we talk about white collar and blue collar crime, we need to change the way in which we understand citizenry and patriotism. If you're a Trinbagonian, your actions and your words should ensure that this country continues to blossom. But if you are based on, well, my motherland is there, my motherland is here, then you're just for yourself and those who look like you. So patriotism allows you to take ownership for everybody, have a level of integrity, and make decisions that allow the country to blossom. But if we have that whole separation and division, as I always say, there is a blessing in diversity, but also a curse, because the common agreement is always compromise. What are we doing as a country to move forward? But if we have that silo, or those many silos, we're going to have a lot of disagreement, and we're going to have people doing things just to get for them and those around them only. So crime is multi-layered, multifaceted, but it all is based on finding the root cause and fixing the root cause. We have too many Panadol and paracetamol applications to problems that require changing your diet.
Strong words, powerful words. Thank you very much, Kevo, for being on Manstory.
No problem at all.
Need to have you back again. That goes without saying.
Of course. Alvin, I want to say thank you, first of all, for bringing me on, and I want to commend you on your initiative. The Manly Man series is something I think would definitely allow people to understand men on a much deeper basis, and also a wide variety of men who come from different backgrounds. So being able to be consistent, as I said before, consistent to your plan is so important. And thank you for your service to giving men a voice and a space.
I appreciate that.
No problem, brother.
You mentioned consistency. No pressure, right? See how many of these we're going to churn out a month.
Of course.
All right. Well, you take care, and we'll definitely have you back on for sure.
No problem, brother. Take care.